Introduction to Azure Synapse Ingestion from Kafka. Azure Synapse is a powerful analytics service that allows you to integrate and analyze data from various sources including Apache Kafka. In this tutorial we will explore the best practices for ingesting data from Kafka into Azure Synapse. Step 1: Understanding Kafka and Azure Synapse integration. To ingest data from Kafka into Azure Synapse, you need to understand how these two services integrate. Kafka is a distributed streaming platform that publishes and subscribes to data streams. Azure Synapse, on the other hand, is a cloud-based analytics service that allows you to integrate and analyze data from various sources. Step 2: Setting up Kafka and Azure Synapse. To set up Kafka and Azure Synapse, you need to create a Kafka cluster and an Azure Synapse workspace. You can create a Kafka cluster using Azure HD Insight or Confluent Cloud. Once you have created the Kafka cluster and Azure Synapse workspace, you need to configure the Kafka connector to send data to Azure Synapse. Step 3: Configuring the Kafka connector. To configure the Kafka connector, you need to specify the Kafka topic and the Azure Synapse table where you want to ingest the data. You also need to specify the data format and the authentication method. The Kafka connector supports various data formats including Avro and JSON. Step 4: Best practices for ingesting data from Kafka. When ingesting data from Kafka into Azure Synapse, there are several best practices to keep in mind. First, you should use a high-throughput connector to handle large volumes of data. Second, you should use a robust error handling mechanism to handle any errors that may occur during ingestion. Third, you should use a data validation mechanism to validate the data before ingesting it into Azure Synapse. Step 5: Monitoring and optimizing data ingestion. Once you have set up the Kafka connector and started ingesting data into Azure Synapse, you need to monitor the data ingestion process and optimize it for performance. You can use Azure Monitor to monitor the data ingestion process and optimize it for performance. You can also use Azure Synapse Analytics to analyze the ingested data and gain insights. Conclusion: Ingesting data from Kafka into Azure Synapse is a complex process that requires careful planning and execution. By following the best practices outlined in this tutorial, you can ensure that your data ingestion process is efficient and effective. Remember to use a high-throughput connector and robust error handling mechanism to handle large volumes of data and any errors that may occur during ingestion.